Hi, I'm Brian. Welcome to Autogefühl. We're here just south of Barcelona to bring you our full report on the new Volkswagen SV or Sportsvan, depending on where you live. Well, this is just a facelift. I say just a facelift. So from the exterior, there's not a huge amount that's been changed. But one of the things that has is the bumper. And the large reason that they've done that is to integrate this new feature. This is the flat 2D badge, and it now houses all of the sensors for the vehicle. So on any of the assistance systems that you have fitted as options, you don't get those obtrusive features built into the grille. So it's not massively different from a standard Golf on the side. It's 1.80 m or about 5'9" in width. That's exactly the same as the Golf. And because of that, it doesn't sit particularly different on the road from the front. You do notice the slightly higher rake up to accommodate for the greater height. And there are a couple of styling details here or there that are a little different. But to be honest, it stayed pretty consistent with its predecessor. We now have LED daytime running lights fitted as standard to the car, but if you want LED front bulbs, you're going to have to spring for those as options on the highest package. Other than that, we have a very nice, clean, angular design. I like the way these lights cut right into the grille. It's very hard to design a small car with this higher front without it looking a bit too boxish, and I think they've done a nice job here. As you can see, we've kept the lines simple right across the front in order to make sure that we're accentuating the width rather than the height here. Lower down, we have nice, subtle, discreet air intakes and little splashes of chrome just to give you that added feel of quality. Now we come round to the side, and this is where the story of the SV really starts. It's 161 meters or 5'3" in height, and that's about 16 centimeters or 7 inches taller than a standard Golf. And here is where the compromise has to be. If you stand back and look at the side all in one go, there's no getting around the fact it's a little bit boxy. Well, they've done what they can. We have a nice character line here that runs straight from the front through into the handles on the door and right the way into the lights at the back. Another little character line a little lower down on the doors, and all these things are designed to try and compress that height down visually. But there really is only so much you can do. This does look rather like a box from the side, there's no getting away from it. But let's not forget, this is a car that's designed around practicality, not around visual aesthetic. If you want visual aesthetic, you're going to need to stick with the Golf. But I think once you get inside this car, you're going to find out that you're actually quite happy with what they did with all of that extra space. The SV comes standard with either 16 or 17-inch wheels. Here we have the optional 18 inches, which are of course extra. I am very pleased to see that they come nicely equipped with tyres that aren't crazily thin, so you don't suffer too much from that additional road noise, and it's still very comfortable to drive. If anything, the larger wheels here help to draw your attention away from the additional height that the vehicle has, and they look very pleasing overall. So now we come round to the rear of the vehicle. Well, when you design cars, you're always going to be up against the decision as to whether you want to favour form or function. And like the side, but kind of accentuated, there is no getting around the boxiness of the rear of this car. I certainly wouldn't call it wholly unlovely, but it certainly isn't massively appealing either. I'm happy to see that they focused on function here. If you want looks, go with a straightforward Golf. This is all about space. They've tried a little bit. I think the new bumpers do certainly add a nice touch. Here we don't see the Highlines version of the fully chrome fake exhausts. We have plastic bottoms, but the chrome strip across the back still tries to elongate this width. But there just isn't an awful lot you can do when you have this much room on a smaller platform. But you know what? It doesn't look bad. Let's take a look inside and see if the compromises on styling were worth paying for. Well, let's be honest. That's certainly not the biggest boot you've ever seen, and certainly not the biggest boot you've ever seen on a Golf. There's 590 litres of load space back here, but that is with the seats up. And the reason that it's only that size is because of a few nice features that I'll show you once we get to looking inside. But for now, in case you think, I don't know about that, it's been a little bit compromised, there are lots of thoughtful touches here that make this space really very usable without messing around with anything else by way of folding seats down or making adjustments. Let me show you. It might not seem like much, but that's a really nice feature to have. If you have something just a little bit larger to fit into your car, you can drop down the back panel here and gain that extra bit of space. Admittedly, that's not going to give you the flat load space, so I like the fact that they've considered this in terms of giving the standard room this flat, almost zero depth entry. Meanwhile, underneath, you can see that this is the bay in which a spare wheel would fit if we had one in here. It's also where you can fit a subwoofer for an extra extended infotainment system. Now, where the SU really starts unlocking its secrets are when you start to look at all the different space configurations you can have, and suddenly that 590 litres doesn't seem too bad after all. When I tell you that with the seats down flat, we go up immediately to 1,520 litres of load space, things start to look a little differently. And look at this. With the seats folded down, I almost have a completely flat load area. That is really nice for being able to fit in purchases from the furniture store. So we have a pretty standard, straightforward Volkswagen key here. Let's take a look and see what's happening inside. Well, I think the first thing that you can say about the interior is it's conservative. And I like that, I have to tell you. In the era that everything has to come in 900 different colors with multiple different combinations, I like that the emphasis on this car's design is simplicity and functionality. So the first thing that we can see as we look into the car are these fabric seats. I have to tell you, they're actually extremely comfortable to sit on. Yes, they look a little bit bland and boring. Yes, they might show up some of the darker things that you could get on there. But in general, I think that they're going to age nicely and wear and tear is not going to show up too badly on them. I think this choice of coloration on the plastic is also a nice change from just plain black. If we have a look at the door panel design, we have really a nice, discreet graphite effect inlay into the door. Very simple locking, unlocking door mirror functions here, and then standard options for your windows down here. Nice big storage pockets in the side. Look at that. I think I could probably fit 1.5 litres of water here, and there's plenty of additional space for notes. And even a discreet slot back here in which you can fit a reflective vest to keep you safe in the very unlikely event that you should break down. So let's take a seat and see how it is once you get inside. Well, the first and probably also the most obvious thing to note is the additional height that the car provides with this increased space means that you have a much more elevated seating position. And clearly that's really nice from a driver's perspective. I am 1.78 m or about 5'10" in height, but I do have a very long torso. And I have to tell you, there's at least 3 inches of room between my head and the roof lining here. Now that said, don't forget, this car does not come with a panoramic roof. You can have that fitted as an optional extra. It's huge. If you haven't seen it yet, check out Thomas's video on the static launch of the car. It's amazing. And I have to tell you, it doesn't actually compromise the roof height that much. But for now, we have more than enough space here and I'm very comfortable. There's a massive amount of adjustment we can do on the seat's height itself with this lever here, and that's really great for allowing somebody of different proportions to make sure that they're going to feel exactly where they want to be in this car. The whole way in which the interior is laid out is designed to give you the maximum amount of comfort and utility when driving this vehicle, and I think they've really done a pretty good job. The two enduring themes of this car would have to be conservatism and practicality. Nothing here is going to jump out and wow you. Personally, that's just the way that I like it. But there are so many small discerning features within the car that just make you feel comfortable. They really have sought to give you as much room in terms of your options as possible. So starting at the top and working down, as you can see, we have a standard sunglass holder right here, standard controls for the lighting, very nice frameless rear view mirror, and look at this, a storage area right in top of the dashboard. It's actually pretty deep. You can see if I put my hand in there, I can actually fit quite a lot in there. Coming slightly further down, we have a completely soft touch top to the dashboard, which looks very discreet, totally doesn't get in your way when you're looking at the car. Coming down even further, in this car, we have, again, more of this graphite inlay styling, very discreet, doesn't bother you at all. Traditional analog dials with a digital display in the middle, and the infotainment system. Now, there are 3 different infotainment systems available with the SV. This is the middle one that's on offer. The smallest one has a 6.5-inch screen. This is 8 inches from corner to corner, and the top model, the Discover Pro, is 9.2. But I think, as you can see in terms of the way that this fits in with the styling, I really wouldn't find an argument as to why I would personally need a bigger screen in a car than this. The screen itself is multi-touch and is very responsive. It's pleasing to see how much advance has come on with the processors behind these units. The 2 knobs here allow us simple functionality, zoom in and zoom out within the navigation system, and of course volume up and down and off if you want to access the media. We have, as you can see, slightly predictive touch on here, so as we move our hand away, we get the full display. As we move it closer, the options come up. That's a nice feature. It's not new, but it fits in well. So coming back over to the steering wheel, here we have a standard Volkswagen multi-function steering wheel. So we have the cruise control on the left-hand side with volume control for the infotainment system. And on the right, we can change the display functionality for our central digital display. And we can also put some basic speech functions into the infotainment system here. That's a technology that's growing and becoming more useful all the time. So if you don't use that yet and you still wonder, but would I ever use it? Hold on, you will do. Coming further down, we have the climate controls here, a very standard expected layout, and then a little bit more storage below. Pleased to see that we have 2 USB points for charging and for interactivity with the car. We have an auxiliary in, and we still, in addition to that, have a 12-volt charging point. I have to tell you, there are many more expensive cars than this that do not offer such a wide range of charging in the front of their cars. So the forerunner to the Sportsvan was of course called the Golf Plus. And although it was well received, it didn't sell that well. Only around about 50,000 units sold in the UK in the whole of its production run. 2014, we saw the introduction of the Sportsvan, and since then, 150,000 units have been sold in Germany alone. So, a significant difference. I think the reasoning for that is that the Golf Plus was based on the Golf 5 platform, and that certainly compromised some of the ways in which you could utilize the space. Here in the Golf Sportsvan, we utilize the Golf 7 platform. The modular transverse matrix that we all know and love from so many vehicles is really giving us the maximum use of that space in this car. And because of that, I think it represents a really significant value within the Golf lineup. An entrance level Golf is only going to cost you about €2,000 less than this car. And if what you're looking for is utility and practicality at an entrance level pricing of just over €20,000, I think you get an awful lot of car for your money. Our car also has inductive charging built in here. So if you put it all together, that means you have charging in the front alone for 4 separate devices. I'm not quite sure where you'd put 4 separate devices, but it's nice to know that they really have thought of everything. Coming slightly further back, you can see a very standard Volkswagen Golf gear stick. We have electronic parking, we have auto on-off, and we have automatic parking, and of course the rear parking camera and detection system. A little further back still, a nice discreet storage space. These are nice options for putting drinks in. And if you have additional things that you wish to hold, there's an elastic band here. This unit does actually remove, which means if you have more that you want to fit in here that isn't cups, you can do that as well. And if you don't want to look at any of it, it slides out of the way very nicely. Further back still, we have a very standard adjustable armrest. But again, it's the details that make it really nice. So obviously we have height adjustment. We have a huge storage bin in there. But look at this. This is not a unique feature, but it's a nice one. You can pull that out, and that makes it a little bit comfortable, a little bit more comfortable, I should say, for those longer drives when you just want somewhere to rest your arm. The car that we're driving today is the Comfort Line. That's the middle of the 3 available fit levels, the Trend line being the entrance level and the High line being the one with all the whistles and bells. So there are some nice additional features that come with the Comfort Line, and one of those is under seat storage for both of the front seats. We can take a look at that here. That's quite a nice place to stick everything that you have nowhere else to fit. And we also have additional storage here for the front seat passenger. Now, you might think, would I ever really need that under seat storage? Well, you might. It's not the world's most roomy glove box, and by the time you have your owner's manual in there and a couple of other things, it's pretty much full. But in fairness, I think that's standard for the range, and you have enough space for everything that you need to store. This is where we really start to see the benefits that the SV brings. Now, obviously, because the SV has a longer wheelbase, we have, as you can see, a lot of room back here. This is a car that's not just tokenistically suggesting you can drive with rear seat passengers, but you really can have people back here for a long, comfortable trip. Now, you might think that when you fold these seats down so they're nearly flush, that's going to result in some sort of a compromise on the seats themselves. I'm happy to tell you it doesn't. Look at all this room. Again, that's nearly 5 inches of space between my head and the roof lining here. This seat is more than comfortable, and if I think I want it a little different from how it's set up, look at this. I can completely adjust the rake of the rear seats. Nice and upright for when I'm driving around town, and if I want to go a little bit further or maybe take a rest, I can recline it right the way back. But the benefits of having that extended wheelbase don't stop there. Remember when we took a look in the back at the boot and I said, it's not the biggest boot you've ever seen? Well, that's only in its current format. Don't forget that at the moment I'm set up to have the maximum amount of legroom that I could possibly ever want back here. And this seat has not been moved forward for my unusually short legs. This has been set up for a taller person to drive. So you really can see just how much room there is back here. But if I need more space in the boot, I can slide the entire rear seats forwards, creating a bigger boot and still plenty of space back here. That is a really fantastically useful feature for a car to have. It means if I have to bring suitcases to the airport or something else, I still can travel back here, but I have more room in the back. And that's not the only place in which the additional functionality of this setup features. Everything has been thought about in terms of how you might want to interact with the space. And that's really enjoyable in a car, a small car, in terms of the rear seat use, because too often the rear seat is just an afterthought. Now, we've all heard of the 60-40 split, but have you heard of the 60-40, 40-40-20 split? Well, I guess that's what we're looking at here. I can obviously fold down either one of these seats independently or the middle. Brilliant. If I want to get something long through here like skis or anything else, no problem. And I still can fit my 2 rear seat passengers in complete comfort. If I want to access the boot, I can do that without needing to get out of the car. I can't really see how they could have gone to more trouble to increase the functionality back here. I'm very impressed, as you can probably tell, and it's all about usefulness. In the middle down here, we have storage. We have a 12-volt charge point, so we haven't forgotten the passengers at the rear and the passengers' own comfort controls. And because we're driving the Comfort Line, we also have these pop-up trays. Now, I have to tell you, I have never yet experienced a pop-up tray in a car that doesn't feel very plastically, but at least these are quite pleasingly solid. You do get the impression that your children or anybody else's could play with these for a long time and they would still stay intact. So let's take a look and see what's powering this thing. Ah, one-handed lift, nice. So we have one of the two new engines that was being talked about. This is the 1.5 litre TSI. R1 comes with a 6-speed manual gearbox and it produces 130 horsepower. It's got more than enough pickup, but if economy is your main thing, there is also a brand new 1 litre 85 horsepower engine. Although personally haven't driven this, I don't really know that I would want a whole much less amount of power. So the starting lineup comes with 4 TSI petrols altogether, ranging from that lower one at 85 right up into the big beast, and that produces 150. There are also 2 TDIs producing either 115 or 150 horsepower. Well, we all know that diesels are a little bit touchy right now. So for me, I think that this would have to be my pick of the bunch. I'm a big fan of this engine. It demonstrates good economy, but it's still fun to drive. So the Volkswagen SV or Sportsvan, how does it drive? Well, today we're going to take it on a real test throughout Barcelona, several different types of terrain, just to find out how it handles different environments. The first thing that we have to tell you will come as no surprise to you. The added height really makes a difference to your driving position. You feel a lot more upright and presented towards the road, which is no bad thing. Visibility because of that all around is generally very good indeed. As I look over to my shoulder, there is quite a large blind spot right here because of the headrest in conjunction with the B-pillar. So having that side impact protection really does help. We have a monitoring system fitted to this car, of course not standard, which will tell us when something's alongside us. And in several of the newer cars with those chunkier B-pillars, that really does pay to have. So the first bit of driving that we're going to be doing today is going to be on the highway. We're going to have a look and see how our new, more powerful engine behaves once it has a little bit of road to open up on. We're driving the 1.5 litre TSI. That comes in on this version with 130 horsepower. It's not the most powerful engine in the world, but it does certainly provide something that was lacking in the predecessor, which is just a little bit more oomph. One of the common criticisms of the last car is that although it was great, it didn't quite have the fun and agileness that you expect from a Golf, and they've really tried to address that with the facelift. So we have a little bit more power. Let's see what that feels like. We're coming onto the on-ramp, onto the Autobahn, and it's fine. The steering is light and pleasingly agile. What I especially like about this car is that although you do have the extra height, you don't experience, at least at first, much in the way of body roll. It's nicely controlled in every maneuver that you use it for. So we only have an 80 kilometer limit on this road. We're not going to be able to really open it up and see what it can do. Not yet. We've got a slightly higher speeded bit of section coming up and we'll find out how it behaves there. So we're driving the 6-speed manual gearbox, which, as you'd expect from Volkswagen, is polite. The gear change is very smooth. There's not too much travel in the gearbox. It's effortless. What can I say? You wouldn't really expect it to be any different at all. Pleasing is to note that you're not experiencing any significant form of drag in acceleration terms or handling from that extra height and that higher profile. I think they've gone to quite a bit of effort to make sure the aerodynamics of this car don't give you any lag problems whatsoever. Really, in essence, it's like driving a Golf. Well, it's like driving a Golf if you're driving a Golf with a smaller engine and in a little bit less excitable manner. But let's be honest, the primary reason that this car has been designed and built is to answer questions of practicality, not sporty driving. So we were never really expecting it to handle like a GTI, but with a Golf, you always hope just the same. So let's see how the acceleration is. Well, we're in 5th currently, and we've just moved into 120 kilometers per hour zone. Although it's not the fastest off the mark, it certainly is comfortable. Again, you really find the gear changes to be effortless, and it provides a smooth surge of power. Nobody is going to be blown away by the performance in this car, but in fairness, I don't think anybody was particularly expecting to be. It is very comfortable to drive, the ride height is excellent, the all-round visibility is very good. Every time I look in the back of one of these frameless rear view mirrors, I really appreciate the touch. As with most Golfs, you just feel that it's effortless. And for me, that's very important. especially in a larger car. I don't really want to notice that size when I'm driving around, and I feel that it more than delivers. Interesting to note is that we're driving here on 18-inch wheels, and sometimes that results in a lot more road noise and sometimes a little bit less comfort as well. Well, here too, pleasingly, I have nothing really negative to report, but we'll see how they behave once we take them on a slightly more weathered track. But on the highway, driving at an average speed of over 100 kilometers per hour, as you can hear, I can talk and I can hear perfectly comfortably. The sound insulation on the car is really very good, and as far as the comfort from the road, well, again, it's a very nice road, but I'm not experiencing any discomfort from that at all. So for the second part of the driving test, we've brought you slightly south of Barcelona to the Sitges National Park here in Barcelona. Please, apologies if I have misspelt that. I almost certainly have. It is beautiful here. You have not only clear panoramic views of the ocean and wonderful arid hillsides, but also some fantastically winding roads. And that really does seem like an excellent place to find out how this slightly higher vehicle handles. And keep rolling. So if I throw this around a corner, obviously not at ridiculous speeds, you can start to get a sense of what really is impressive about the engineering of this car. Despite its extra height, you still don't experience that body roll that you keep waiting for. Just about to drive past a cyclist here. Nice smooth gear change down into second. And what you can see is that even under steep and demanding roads, the car handles itself very ably. Now, obviously being a slightly smaller engine than some of the smaller, more sporty cars, you are going to notice a little bit more in terms of gear changing and lack of torque, exactly where you want it. But I don't think realistically, if you're driving around with 3 children in the back, which I think most of the people who buy this car will be, are even going to be driving at the speed that I'm driving at currently. Bearing in mind I'm not driving crazily, but still, this is not a car for speeding. I only drive a little faster than I ordinarily would in order that you can get a good sense of how this car handles when you put it under pressure. Now, I know these roads well. We have a nice bend coming up here. Let's have a look. I didn't hold off putting it into that corner, and although Michelle looks a little frightened, I have to tell you, there was no roll, no hint of slippage, nothing. So in terms of the way that the drivetrain interacts with this increased height and the car handling, I have to report it's almost as pleasing as a Golf. One of the really nice things about driving the new SV is that you do get the driving experience of the Golf, but with the elevated driving position, you also get to enjoy a lot more of the scenery. And where could be better to experience that than right here? So we already know that the sound insulation is good on the highway, but here, once we get it up into the hills, sound insulation is very nice too. We don't hear any complaining from the gearbox at higher revs. We don't hear any additional road noise. There we go, just dropped it down so you can hear that. We don't hear any additional road noise from the lower quality tarmac finish on the roads. And we don't hear really much of anything except for peace and quiet. I'm not getting any complaining off the steering or the car from the loose gravel on the roads. And even though some of these corners are a little bit blind, at no time do I feel anything other than completely in control. And I have to tell you, the brakes work pretty well too. So I often think that one of the best ways to sum up a car's interior effect while you're driving is only really noticeable after you've dug deep down into the drive of the car. Why? Well, if there's enough to irritate you in the way that a car drives and the way that it handles, you'll never get on to noticing the rest of the way the car lays out in order to feel critical of it. When I originally looked at this car, I was slightly concerned that the seats, because they're so flat, wouldn't present you with enough of a holding feeling while you're going round corners. Surprisingly, they actually do, and I have to tell you, they are very comfortable and supportive. They look pretty plain and straightforward, but I think a lot of design work has gone into them in order to give you the support and the comfort that you want while driving. And the same amount of effort can also have been said to be made with the interior of the car. It's discreet and it's stylish. I guess some people could say it's a little bit boring, but then maybe I am this car's target customer. I like the discreet styling of the inlays on the dashboard. I like the discreet styling of the dashboard overall. There is nothing here that distracts me from what I'm supposed to be doing, and I really enjoy, yeah, I know I'm old, but I do really enjoy the analog dials. The nice digital display in the middle gives me the adaptability that I want in terms of seeing the information that I need, but I still feel like it's a car I can relate to, and I enjoy that. Meanwhile, we have the middle of the available infotainment systems. The entrance level has a 6.5-inch screen. This one has an 8-inch screen, and the top model, the Discover Pro, comes with a 9.2-inch screen. That one is all digital, doesn't feature any knobs. You know I like my knobs, right? So this just has the two, one either side. That really is a bonus to me, because as well as having the multifunctional steering wheel that's included on this line of the SV, I also have my easy-to-reach tactile knobs for zooming in and out of the navigation or changing the volume when I'm driving down the road. And I guess I'm just an old-fashioned guy, but I still really like that. Honestly though, I don't think you could make an argument for needing a larger display screen than this. The touch responsiveness is good, the controls are excellent, and I feel completely able to get the information I want when I want it. So now I do have some experience of being driven round Spanish roads like this by a rally driver, and I have to tell you, I did not come away feeling particularly fantastic about that life experience. Michel is monitoring all of the cameras as we are recording this, and he ought to be better qualified than anybody else to say what his experience has been so far. How do you feel as a passenger, Michel? Are you comfortable?
Kind of, yeah. I really feel comfortable, to be honest.
Michel feels good.
Yeah.
Michel feels good. We all feel good. So that's not bad, given that he spent these twisty, winding roads staring at the camera display rather than at the view. I'm happy to tell you he still hasn't been sick. And that to me is a ringing endorsement. So we've come off the highway to take a little bit of a look through town. It seems to me like this should be the ideal environment for this car. We've got the heightened seating position, which allows us to have a clear view, parked vehicles, children running out between, lots of school crossings happening. It feels pretty nice. Okay, I'm going to sound a little boring here, but I kind of do feel like this is the perfect car for rushing out to the shops in just before you go to pick the kids up. There's acres of space in here for anything you want to put in, and driving through a small town environment is actually really very pleasing. Because you don't have a more powerful engine, you have enough pickup where you need it, but you're not killing yourself about the economy of the vehicle and always wondering if maybe you should be driving something that's a little bit more appropriate. The reason that's so pleasing is that if you've ever driven an SUV through a busy town, there's something that doesn't feel quite right about it and you feel a little bit awkward. The nice thing about this car is it's small enough that you still feel like you're driving a small car, but nobody knows quite how much room you have going on inside. There are lots of nice features that come with the Comfort line as standard, and the entry-level price on the Comfort line unequipped is about 26,000 euro. Now that said, being Volkswagen, there are a million different assistance systems and packages that you can add to this thing. Now our car is featuring a new colour called Cranberry Red, although if you actually see it in person, I think you might find it a little bit challenging to describe it as cranberry. I would say burgundy is probably closer to it. But it's appealing, and all by itself, that's going to hit you for an extra 500 euros on the price. So, to properly equip the car and to add all the assistance systems that you might want to have featured, you could look to stick anywhere from an extra 5,000 to 10,000 onto the price. I personally think you can nicely equip it with everything that you're realistically going to want for about an extra 5. But if you are the kind of person who really wants to make sure they have everything that's on offer, or at least enough that you're not going to feel regret later on that you didn't get something, then you could figure on spending about an extra 10. And as I said, there really is every assistance system you could possibly imagine available, and then some more. So what do we think about the Golf SV? Well, overall, I have to say I'm absolutely delighted. If you consider what this car is trying to achieve, it is in essence a natural competitor for the Mercedes B-Class, but clearly it's going to come in a little bit cheaper than that. Now, the entrance level price on this is just over 20,000 euro. The one that we have here, which is the Comfort line, comes in starting from 26, and nicely equipped, clearly as we have here, it comes in at 36,000. Now, that doesn't sound like a vast amount of money, but it's not insignificant either, so you really do have to look at what you're getting for that cash. What I like about this car is definitely the balance between the engine and the space that it provides. The 1.5 litre additions to this lineup are superb, and they really make driving the car a lot more of a Golf-like experience. Now, that's important to me, but what's equally as important is the massive amounts of space and utility that you get with this vehicle. It's really impressive to see how much flexibility there is in terms of both the passenger use and also its possibilities for putting luggage and moving things around, whilst without ever having to compromise on your enjoyment of the drive. So I think what it comes down to is this: how likely are you realistically to need to transport 3 people in the back and their luggage? If that's something you do on a regular basis, but you really like the enjoyment of the way that a car drives, I can't think I can honestly recommend a better car that's going to achieve that while staying a car than this. In terms of its value for return ratio, as it compares to the entire Volkswagen lineup, I think it delivers hands down a fantastic experience. Bear with me one moment. So, if you're looking for pure driving pleasure and you don't think you really have so much things or people that you need to transport, you can get an equally good experience from a Golf. Certainly the Golf Estate variant is also excellent value for money. This just really is a piece of me. I've been delighted to see how well the compromise in height still manages to deliver the driving experience that you want. So from me, 2 thumbs up. Please let us know what you think in the comments below. If you've got any questions, let us know. Otherwise, we hope we'll see you again soon.